Hello, and you're welcome to the Siren Podcast, brought to you by DOH Africa. October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're going to be having a CSAM special session. But today, it's not just me. I have an amazing guest with me. His name is Oreoluwa Jetawo. Are you excited to be here?
Oh, definitely I am. I am.
All right. So today, we're going to be talking about how to mitigate ransomware using a fine zero trust security. But before that, quickly.
That's a very nice topic.
Quickly introduce yourself to us, Oreoluwa.
Okay, yeah. So you're just like your awesome, let's say your awesome hosts. I said my name is Oreoluwa Jetawo, and I am a security engineer. I work for an MSSP, a managed service security provider. So we basically offer cyber security services to our clients. Basically, any kind of security services you are requesting for. So let's just say cyber security as a service, right? So that's really all about me, I suppose. Except you want to know more, but really that's all about me.
All right.
From a professional point of view.
Okay. Oreoluwa, you're welcome to the show. You're welcome to Siren Podcast. So, let's get to the business of the day. Can you explain what zero trust policy means in the context of cybersecurity?
Yes. So just like the name, right? Zero trust, meaning no trust, right? So it's something you say, or there's something you must have heard people saying, right? It's never trust, always verify. So basically, everything is implicitly denied. So you are not granted access to, let's say, data. You're not granted access to an asset until your identity has been verified, right? And it's not just a one point. It's not just a one point in time verification, right? That verification process is continuous, right? It's a continuous process over and over again, right? So you're not just going to be granted access to research just because of an inherent authentication process, right? So that's really zero trust in relation to cybersecurity, in the context of cybersecurity.
Thank you so much for that amazing point. Since we're basically on ransomware today, how prevalent is ransomware today, and why is it a major concern for organizations?
How prevalent it is. So I think I remember going through a research done by Sophos, and from that research, right, statistically speaking, it said 59% of organizations actually were hit by ransomware within the last year. Just imagine 59%, right? And out of those 59% of organizations, right, 94% of those victims, right, bad actors actually targeted their backups. Because usually organizations, they have their backups somewhere, but when bad actors decide to attack organizations, they decide, okay, instead of only attacking the organization itself, let's attack their backups, so that they don't have any way of recovering their systems. Because the whole idea of ransomware is an attacker comes in, right, the initial point of access, compromises your network, right, encrypts everything within your network, right, and tries to request for a ransom. And it's either two things. It's either you pay or you don't pay, right? And even though you pay, there's no guarantee that you actually get the decryption key. So it's a very, very it's a very, very tough moment to pass through for any organization, right? Any organization hit by ransomware attack, it's a very, very tough thing to go through. So, well, I think all we can do is just keep our feet on the ground and keep our ears allowed, right?
Okay. What are the most common entry points for ransomware attacks?
Okay, I think I'll mention three, right? One is exploited vulnerabilities. So when you have systems that are vulnerable, right, to certain exploits, right? Another thing is compromised credentials, right? You have credentials to critical systems that have been compromised down the dark web, right? And then the last is social engineering, right? Phishing, etc. So let me digress a bit, right? So there's something. So initially, like years ago, right? Only APTs could actually launch ransomware attacks, right? Because they were that sophisticated. But nowadays, there's something called ransomware as a service, where you yourself, you can just go to the dark web and purchase that service, right? And you can launch the attack against an organization. That's how simple it has become, right? So, yeah.
Okay. We'll actually come back to that ransomware as a service later.
Yeah, that's fine.
How does a zero trust approach differ from traditional security measures?
Okay. So traditional security measures, right? As long as you have been authenticated initially, right? There's no follow-up authentication or follow-up authorization, right? So all you need to do is to, at the beginning of that flow, at the beginning of the authorization flow, at the beginning of the authentication flow, that's the end. No one or no system is going to request you for an additional authentication or authorization process, right? That's what differentiates it from zero trust. Zero trust is, at every point in time, you have to prove that you're who you say you are before you can actually access this resource, right? There's nothing like, oh, you have been authenticated before, prior to this time, there's no need. Okay, let's allow you to go. No, there's nothing like that, right? At every point in time, when you're trying to access a critical infrastructure, basically critical data, right? You are prompted to authenticate, or you are prompted to show that proof that, okay, that you actually need to access this, or you have the necessary permission to actually access this resource. So that's what differentiates it from traditional security measures.
Okay. Can you maybe, let us know the key component of a fine-grained zero trust policy for ransomware prevention?
Okay, so when you're looking at zero trust, right, for ransomware prevention, I think there are 5 things that you look into, right? So I call them pillars, right? You can call them components. So 1 is identity access management, right? 2 is network segmentation. 3 is data security. 4 is device security, and 5 is continuous monitoring, right? So all these 5 components, they're expected to do something. They're expected to protect the people. They're expected to protect the data. They're expected to protect workloads, devices, and your network, right? So they all have their different functions, that they all have the roles they play, right? In, let's say, in implementing, right, or let's say in implementing zero trust as a whole.
Okay. So how do organizations implement zero trust without disrupting business operations, and what are some common mistakes to avoid?
Okay. So the thing is, many organizations feel it's an audacious task, right, to implement zero trust. But it's really not, right? It's supposed to be a gradual process, right? It's not something that you do once and let to go, right? So ideally, right, organizations should do three things, right? The first is to discover, second is to define, and third is to enforce. Right. So when you talk about discovering, that discovering phase, right? You're trying to discover, okay, what exactly do you want to protect? Right. You have a critical infrastructure that I want to protect, right? You have your backups that I want to protect. Perfect, right? When you are passed through that discovery stage, the next step is to go to that definition stage, right? Define. So it's there and then that you start defining your policies, right? Policies, strategies, controls, right? What controls do I need to put in place? What policies do I need to put in place, right? Full disencryption, you're disabling USBs, installation of security tools, right? Technologies within an endpoint for basically security, right? Is that point where you define all those controls, all those policies, right? Then the next step, which is the last step, is to enforce. Now that you have decided on, okay, what do you want to protect, right? I have defined your policies, your controls. The next step is to enforce, and it's a gradual process, right? And zero trust is something that doesn't end. It's not something that you can do over the course of 6 months and voila, you're done. Right? It's a continuous process, because remember what I mentioned something that I mentioned monitoring, right? You can't just monitor your systems for 6 months and you're done. That's why I said continuous monitoring, right? You're continuously monitoring your systems for any kind of attack or any claims of an attack, right? So most mistakes that organizations make is they feel that it's really audacious and they just go right into enforcing, right? They don't think about, okay, what do we want to protect, right? They don't lay down certain policies, right? Take for instance now, let's say you're an organization that deals with payment card information, right? Then you start talking about your PCI DSS, right? Your ISMS, right? You're an organization that you handle data, right? Your GDPR, your NDPR, right? Just laying down those policies in place will help you make better decisions, right? Because those policies are in place to ensure that you are going according to the best practices, right? So yes.
Okay. Can we have real world example of a company that successfully prevented a ransomware attack using zero trust policy?
Okay, I think I remember one, right? But the organization, their name was never disclosed, right? But I remember it. I think it was around April, early this year. So it's a US automotive manufacturing company, right? So it was actually a Russian ATP that attacked a particular organization, right? So after the initial foothold, right, their security team were able to detect and stop the APT group from launching the ransomware attack, right? So just imagine if the continuous monitoring phase wasn't in place, right? Because all those pillars, all those companies are supposed to supplement each other, right? If one fails, there's another one in place to help you to detect, right? So assuming the SOC analysis shifts, right, the security analysis shifts were not continuously monitoring the system, assuming the technologies you put in place you were not adequate enough, or they were misconfigured, right? Then there was going to be an issue, right? Because that won't have been picked, and you don't know how much, or you don't know what kind of critical data that particular APT was going to encrypt, right? So I think that was as far back as April 2024, but the particular company right? It wasn't disclosed. The name of the company wasn't disclosed, right? But I just know it was a US automotive manufacturing company. That's really what I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
What metrics or KPIs demonstrate the effectiveness of zero trust policies in stopping ransomware?
Okay, so remember you asked me something earlier. You asked me share real world experience, right? So I'll mention a few, right? So you talk about your MTTD, you talk about your MTTR, right? So MTTD is mean time to detect, MTTR mean time to respond, right? Authentication failures, patch management compliance, etc. So mean time to detect, right? At what point in time, right, was this incident detected? Mean time to respond, right? At what point in time was this incident responded to, right? So imagine if you have technologies in place, right, for device security, and let's say an employee decides to just surfing the internet and he sees a very, very beautiful looking link, right? And mind you, nowadays I heard something very, very intriguing, that you don't necessarily need to click on a link before you can be fished. Hovering around that link might actually get you
I just
something. Yeah. So, but it's not something very common, but it is very, very possible. So, initially people say, oh, just hover around the link, you'll see the URL that's pointing to. So nowadays it looks like hovering around the link to it's also not a good practice, right? It's still a good practice, but in terms of sophisticated attacks, right? And that means that person's browser has to be vulnerable to a particular. It has to be vulnerable, right? So so imagine if you have technologies in place that immediately a ransomware pattern is detected, right, within an endpoint. It quarantines and kills that process immediately. That the technologies they are put in place to implement zero trust, right, in form of device security, right, the mean time to detect was within seconds. Mean time to respond was within seconds as well. Right, that's how you know, okay, these technologies that are put in place to implement zero trust, right, they're actually working effectively, right? Yeah, pretty much. That's really it. There's two things that are very, very common, right? Mean time to detect and mean time to respond.
Okay. What emerging technologies or trends will end zero trust policies in the future?
Emerging technologies, I can think of one, Twingate. So Twingate it's a technology, right? I won't say it's emerging per se, but Twingate is used to mean zero trust, right? It's not like your typical VPN, but it ensures that you don't have access to this resource until you actually grant access to this resource, right? There are other technologies, right? You have Jump Cloud. So Jump Cloud is like a cloud directory as a service, right? It has a host of functions, right? Aside mobile device management, aside device management, aside identity management, aside also acting as a password manager. It can also help to enforce zero trust. Zero trust in terms of network security or network policies, device trust. So if your device is not managed, for example, right, managed in the sense of policies, organization policies are not being pushed to that device. Policies like screen lockouts, full disk encryption, and if your device doesn't meet that necessary security standard, right, you're not going to be allowed to access certain internal resources, right? Network policies as well, right? So network segmentation, etc. So those two technologies are technologies that I know. Even Cloudflare as well, right? I know Cloudflare they zero trust technology. I think call it Cloudflare WAP or so.
Yeah. I
But
actually
just
use WhatsApp.
wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So it looks like you have your tiny zero trust network implemented already.
Of course. I practice what I preach.
Perfect. That's great.
All right, thank you. So, how can organizations balance security with user experience and productivity?
I've been asked this question a lot of times, right? There's this constant fight between security and development team. There's always that fight, right? Development team or the dev guys say, oh, that you guys are impeding on my productivity. Oh, you guys are not allowing me to be productive. Oh, I lost 4 days of work because of this new security tool that I implemented, right? But the whole idea is, before I say what the whole idea is, let me chip in something. Of this, I don't know if you remember this recent Disney breach. I don't know if you remember, where a particular employee at Disney, right, he logged into Slack on his personal laptop, right, and unfortunately, right, his laptop was already compromised due to certain game add-on that he downloaded. So as he logged into Slack, his credentials were harvested, and the bad actors were able to download different stuff from his organization Slack. Mind you, so the thing is, in as much as security can be security, right? That doesn't make it that doesn't mean that security cannot stand beside usability, right? Because the whole idea is you are trying to prevent your employees, right? You are not leaving security in their hands, right? You are not hoping they do the right thing due to security controls that you have implemented, right? The security controls that you have implemented, right, is there to prevent them from actually doing the wrong thing, right? Is there in place to ensure that they don't do the wrong thing. You are not banking on them to do the right thing, because you can't just say, okay, I'm hoping, okay, that you share, you do your phishing simulations. You're hoping that your employees don't click on the links. What if they click on it, right? You have security controls in place to ensure that even though they click on it, right, what happens? So the whole idea of security is you're trying to remove, or you're trying to prevent people. You're not telling them, okay, I'm going to lie, I'm going to hope that I did the right thing. No, right? You're point blank telling them that, okay, that this security control is there, right? It's going to prevent you from actually doing the wrong thing, right? So it's a matter of, you just have to weigh that skill, right? You have to look for certain policies that are not going to be too strict on your employees, too strict in the sense of affecting their productivity time, right? Because it's an organization, it's a business, they need to make certain profits, right? So if you are impeding on their productivity, then they have to make a decision. Are they going to pick security over productivity? And you don't want to put your organization in that particular position to make such compromise, right? So that's why when you want to implement certain security controls, right, you need to have tested them out. You need to have laid them out. You need to have defined those policies and controls, right, to ensure that those policies and controls, they in no way impact productivity of employees in general. Right. So yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been quite insightful. I mentioned that we'll come back to ransomware as a service. Yeah. So funny enough, I think last month, September 2024, ransomware as a service, I think it's called there's this particular one, Ransom Up, actually was used to steal data from like two different companies. One was Stillwater Mining Company. I think the officials discovered that the personal information of over 7,000 employees had been stolen using that same ransom. Or the attack was summer, but it took them months to catch on to the breach. Then the next one was Kawasaki Motors Europe. This same ransomware as a service was used behind a major attack on Kawasaki's European offices. Although they tried to swiftly shut down the servers to isolate the issue, the normal remediation act.
Automatic shutdown.
But then they already lost over 500 GB of data. That goes on to explain how much damage ransomware can actually cause. And it also goes back to point out the fact that it's not really about remediation or isolation. It's about what you've put in place, security practices that you've put in place.
Yeah, right.
The attack happens. And that's one thing I love about zero trust. Zero trust would always assume that attack will happen. Somebody will attack you.
You're
always ready. Yet. And that's why this topic was something that we needed to, really, really talk about and shine more light on, especially October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So thank you so much. Thank you, Oreoluwa. Thank you so much for bringing so much show. And thank you to the listeners for sticking to the end. So one more thing for the listeners. One last question for the listeners. Where do you think you can go more about zero trust?
Well, your number one source, right? Google.com. So I don't feel there's a one-stop shop, right, that has all the resources that you need to learn as regards zero trust, right? There's nowhere that has all the resources, right? I feel if you just put in zero trust on Google, right, you see a list of resources from different organizations, right? You see from Trend Micro, you see from Contech, you see from Ciolo, you see from Illumio, right? There are a lot of platforms, right? That this list is not even exhaustive. So it's a lot, right? So as long as you know what you're looking for, right? And all you're looking for is zero trust, right? Implementing zero trust policies, zero trust infrastructure, zero trust architecture, right? So as long as you search online, google.com, right? Your best friend, our best friend, everyone's best friend, right? And it can definitely direct you to a host of resources, right? But I've mentioned some already, right? I've mentioned Trend Micro. Splunk, I think Splunk has I think they have a blog that I think so. Not really sure, but yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we'll back this month for another exciting episode on the Cyrene Podcast Insight to stay ahead.